May the calm of the sea, the glow of the stars, and the hush of the night surround you now. Let every breath grow soft, let every thought grow quiet, and may peace drift over you like gentle waves. The night had opened gently, like a curtain drawn aside to reveal the calmest stage of the world. Above, the moon lingered, round and patient, pouring her silver light across the ocean. The waves were quiet, soft as breath, sliding over the sand in a rhythm that never hurried and never ceased. Every ripple seemed to sigh, as though the sea itself had fallen into a dream. From the deep, a figure began to rise. Her name was Seraya, the Mermaid of Silent Waves. Her hair drifted behind her like strands of dark seaweed touched with light, and her eyes reflected the moon's glow as though they were made of water. She swam slowly, peacefully, until her face lifted above the tide. The hush of the night wrapped around her, and she listened to it as though it were a song. The shore stretched wide and pale, glowing softly under the moonlight. Silver sands sparkled with each kiss of the tide. Seraya glided toward them, letting the water carry her like a cradle. The beach was empty of footsteps, empty of voices, yet alive with quiet beauty. Flowers that only bloomed at night leaned out from the dunes, their petals pale as stars. They seemed to bow in greeting as the mermaid came near. She rested at the edge of the water, half within the sea, half upon the shore. The cool sand pressed gently beneath her palms, and she traced patterns in it, letting the grains slip like soft rain through her fingers. The ocean behind her whispered and sighed, pulling forward, sliding back, always returning. Each motion was a comfort, a reminder of constancy. Seraya closed her eyes and listened. She heard the slow roll of the waves, the delicate rustle of grasses on the dunes, the faint hum of the wind as it drifted inland. All was peaceful. The world seemed to breathe in unison, each sound soft and steady, as though meant to cradle every heart that listened. The stars above shimmered like a net of silver pearls, cast wide across the heavens. Their light touched the sea, and the sea carried it gently back to the sky, as if the two were speaking in glimmers. Seraya lifted her gaze to them, feeling their quiet watchfulness. She did not seek to name them or count them. She only let their presence rest upon her spirit, like the cool touch of night air on her skin. The mermaid dipped her tail beneath the surface, stirring the water in slow, graceful arcs. Each movement made the waves glimmer with moonlight, as though she painted silver trails upon the sea. She thought of nothing but the softness of the moment, the calm tide, the wide sky, the gentle sand beneath her hands. Time was not rushing here. It was stretching, unfolding, drifting as lightly as a feather upon still air. As the night deepened, the sea seemed to fall into an even greater silence. No gulls cried, no boats cut across the water. Only the steady whisper of the tide remained. It was here, in this hush, that Seraya felt most at home. The silence was not empty. It was full, tender, and alive. It was the sound of rest, the sound of peace. She let her voice rise, not in song yet, but in a hum so faint it seemed to blend with the sea itself. The note traveled no farther than the shore, yet it belonged to the night as much as the stars above or the waves below. The ocean listened, the moon listened, the world listened, and Seraya knew she was never truly alone. The mermaid leaned back, her hair spreading over the sand like a dark, flowing tide. She breathed in the salt, sweet air, slow and deep, letting the freshness of the sea calm her spirit. Every breath seemed to carry away the weight of thought. Every exhale became a quiet blessing for the shore. The night continued like this, with the moon sailing steady and the waves rocking the world in gentle rhythm. Seraya, resting upon the silver shore, felt her heart match that rhythm. It slowed, it softened, it became the same as the tide. And so part eye closed in stillness, with the Mermaid of Silent Waves lying peacefully between sea and sand, wrapped in the quietest embrace of moonlight. The night deepened, and the silver shore seemed to glow brighter under the quiet rain of the moon. The sea breathed in and out with tender patience, carrying with it the cool fragrance of salt and mist. Seraya, the mermaid of silent waves, lifted her gaze once more to the heavens. The stars above had gathered like a million watchful eyes, shimmering in the stillness of the night. They hung across the dark sky, as though the universe itself had opened its heart. Seraya felt the gentle pull within her, the calling of song. She had no words to offer, for her melodies were made not from language, but from pure sound, as soft and calming as the tide itself. She placed her hands lightly on the cool sand and drew in a long, quiet breath. When she exhaled, her voice followed, rising like a silver ribbon into the air. Her first notes were low, tender as a whisper. They rippled through the air, blending seamlessly with the hush of the waves. The sea accepted her voice as though it were one of its own size. The sound glided outward, carried on the wind, drifting across the open water. Slowly, her song grew, not louder, but fuller layer upon layer of soft tones, weaving together like threads in a delicate cloth. The stars seemed to shimmer in response. They pulsed faintly, as though echoing her melody. The moon, wide and watchful, lowered her light upon the water until it became a glowing path, stretching all the way to the horizon. Seraya felt as though she were singing not only to the sea, but to the sky itself. Beneath the surface, creatures of the deep stirred in peaceful acknowledgement. A school of silver fish drifted closer, their bodies moving like a single shining cloud. They circled slowly, entranced by the calm resonance of the mermaid's voice. Tiny crabs peered out from their sandy burrows, their small eyes glittering like beads. Even the seaweed swayed with greater gentleness, following the rhythm of her song. Seraya's melody carried no command, no demand, only comfort. It was a cradle song for the world, meant to still restless waters and calm weary hearts. As she sang, her own spirit grew lighter, as though each note washed away unspoken burdens. The melody was not for her alone. It belonged to all who listened, even those who did not know her name. The wind caught her voice and carried it further, out across the wide expanse, where waves touched the horizon. The song drifted. A quiet ship lay anchored far beyond the shore. Its sails were drawn and its crew asleep. Yet those who stirred in their dreams felt the faint touch of her lullaby. Their rest deepened, their breath slowed. The song of the mermaid wrapped them in unseen comfort. Above, the stars continued to shine with unwavering patience. Seraya lifted her voice to them, adding higher tones that sparkled like drops of light falling into water. The melody twined itself upward, becoming one with the heavens. She imagined the stars leaning closer, listening not with ears, but with hearts. She imagined them sending back their own soft music, a silence so pure it felt like a song in return. Her tail moved slowly in the tide, stirring up glowing trails of bioluminescent light. The water shimmered around her, and it seemed as though she was surrounded by floating stars of her own. The sea and the sky mirrored one another above and below. Both were filled with gentle brilliance. The mermaid closed her eyes, surrendering to the serenity of the moment. Her voice flowed effortlessly, like water pouring from a hidden spring. It rose, it fell, it lingered on long, sighing tones that dissolved into the night air. She did not think of time. She did not think of tomorrow. She thought only of peace and how to share it. Her song drifted on until the waves themselves seemed to hum with it. The shore gleamed, the flowers in the dunes bowed, and the night air quivered softly. It was as though the world itself had paused to listen. In that pause, there was no rush, no fear, no longing. There was only quiet joy, deep and endless. At last, Seraya let her voice fade into silence. The final notes lingered for a while, carried gently by the breeze, before dissolving into the calm night. She opened her eyes, and saw the stars still shining, steady and patient, as though they too had been blessed by her melody. Seraya lowered her head, resting her cheek against her hand. The cool sand pressed lightly against her skin, and the gentle tide washed over her tail in soft rhythm. She felt at peace, wrapped in a silence that no longer seemed empty but alive, as if her song had left behind an invisible warmth. The sea whispered, the stars glimmered, the moon shone her silver path, and Seraya, the mermaid of silent waves, smiled softly, knowing the night was listening still. When the first shimmer of dawn still lingered far beyond the horizon, the sea kept its silence, holding the night in a long embrace. Seraya slipped back into the water, her body gliding with quiet grace. The cool tide welcomed her, closing around her like a blanket of liquid silver. With each movement of her tail, she descended into the depths, where moonlight stretched only faintly, and the world became softer, dreamlike, hushed. The path below was marked, not by roads, but by glowing gardens. They appeared slowly, as though rising from slumber. Corals spread across the seabed in shapes as delicate as blossoms, branches of pale lavender, cups of rose pink, fans of gold and emerald. Each piece caught what little light seeped through the water, and each shimmered with a glow of its own. It was a garden that bloomed not in sunlight, but in silence. Seraya drifted among them. She reached out her hand and let her fingers brush gently across the nearest coral. It glowed brighter at her touch, sending soft trails of light through the water as though it recognized her presence. She smiled, for this was not the first time she had come here. This was the Garden of Coral Dreams, and it always welcomed her home. The water was still, the currents mild, so that nothing disturbed the scene. Schools of tiny fish nestled among the branches, sleeping or moving in unhurried waves. Their scales reflected the coral light, creating patterns like stars scattered across the sea. In some places, shells lay open, their pearls shining faintly, small moons resting within the sea's cradle. Everywhere she looked, Seraya saw peace, soft and endless. She swam slowly, as though afraid to stir the dreamlike calm. The corals seemed alive, though they did not move. They breathed a stillness that reached into her spirit, as if reminding her that life could be bright even in silence. Some corals shaped themselves like towers rising toward the sky, while others spread low, forming wide meadows of color. Seraya paused often, simply to look, simply to feel. A gentle current passed through the garden, like a sigh of wind across flowers. The corals swayed almost imperceptibly, releasing tiny threads of light that drifted upward like petals carried away. Seraya followed them with her eyes, watching as they disappeared into the darker waters above. She felt as though they carried blessings, soft messages for the stars that still glimmered far overhead. Among the coral fields, Seraya discovered hidden places. She found a circle of bright blue coral, shaped like a cradle, where small seahorses slept, their bodies curled like delicate leaves. She found a tunnel lined with red coral, glowing like embers, where shadows whispered but never threatened. Everywhere she went, beauty revealed itself gently, quietly, with no need for grand display. The mermaid stopped at a cluster of coral that rose like a tree, its branches wide and spreading. She rested her hand against it, and again the glow intensified. She leaned close, listening. No voice spoke, yet she felt as though the coral carried memories of tides that had come and gone, of storms that had passed, of countless nights beneath countless moons. She closed her eyes and breathed in the stillness, allowing it to settle into her heart. Time seemed to dissolve. Minutes stretched into hours, or perhaps hours became only moments. It mattered little. In the Garden of Coral Dreams, there was no need for keeping time. Only the rhythm of water mattered, the steady ebb and flow that carried everything gently onward. As Seraya drifted, she noticed flowers blooming among the coral delicate anemones, unfurling soft petals, their colors glowing faintly in the dim light. They moved with the tide, swaying slowly as though dancing to music that could not be heard. She leaned closer, her eyes tracing the delicate folds, marveling at how even the smallest life added beauty to the deep. Above her, the surface shimmered faintly with moonlight. Though it no longer reached strongly this far, it glowed just enough to remind her that the sky and sea were always connected. The stars she had sung to still listened, even here in the quiet depths. Their presence comforted her, like the softest dream lingering at the edge of sleep. Seraya settled herself in the heart of the coral meadow. She curled her tail gently beneath her, resting her arms across a smooth rock warmed by the tide. Around her, the corals continued to glow softly, their light weaving patterns across her face and hair. She felt as though she were surrounded by lanterns, made not by hands, but by nature itself, each one shining with peace. Her eyes closed slowly, though she did not yet sleep. She let her body rest, let the water hold her, let the coral light soothe her spirit. She thought of nothing but the softness around her, the colors, the stillness, the endless dream that belonged only to the sea. And so the garden cradled her, as it had countless times before. It promised no adventure, no trial, no urgency, only rest, only quiet beauty, only peace. The garden of coral dreams faded behind her as Seraya drifted upward, following the gentle pull of the sea. The water around her brightened as she rose, touched again by the silver light of the moon above. Her tail moved slowly, creating ripples of glowing blue in her wake. She carried with her the stillness of the corals. But ahead, the sea promised another kind of peace, one filled with motion, laughter, and grace. As she neared the open waters above, the quiet changed. It was no longer the hush of deep coral gardens. Instead, the water trembled with soft pulses of energy, as though something playful stirred just beyond the horizon. Seraya smiled faintly, for she knew what she would find: a chorus of high, ringing clicks and whistles carried through the tide. They were not loud, not jarring, but light and bright, like bells hidden beneath the waves. A pod of dolphins appeared, their sleek forms darting through the water with effortless joy. They circled one another, spiraling upward in arcs of gleaming silver gray. The moment they saw Seraya, they swam toward her, their whistles rising into tones of recognition. She held out her hands, and two dolphins brushed gently against her palms, their skin smooth and cool. Their eyes shone with a kind of mirth that belonged only to the sea. The pod surrounded her, moving in wide circles. Seraya let herself be carried into their dance. Their movements were quick, yet never rushed, their play full of harmony. They leapt and curved, twisting in shapes that mirrored one another, weaving ribbons of silver light through the moonlit water. The mermaid's tail moved in rhythm, not to command, but to join, as though she too were simply another dancer in the tide. The dolphins rose toward the surface, breaking through the waves in arcs that caught the moonlight. Drops of water fell like stars from their bodies before they slipped gracefully back into the sea. Each leap was silent from below, but Seraya imagined the sound above must be like soft rain upon the surface. She followed them upward, letting the current carry her until her head broke through the waves. The air was cool and fresh. The moon was still wide and watching, the stars still scattered in a silver net. Around her, the dolphins leapt again, their bodies outlined against the sky. They moved not for audience, not for glory, but for joy itself. Their laughter seemed to ripple through the night, bright and uncontainable, though it never disturbed the calm. Instead, it added to the serenity, like light-hearted music drifting into a lullaby. Seraya's hair clung to her shoulders, wet and glimmering. She tilted her head back, letting the cool spray touch her face. The dolphins circled closer, brushing against her tail as though to draw her deeper into their play. She twirled in the water, moving with a grace that was slower than theirs, yet in perfect rhythm. Together, They became a living current, a spiral of harmony beneath the moon. One dolphin leapt high and spun in the air before splashing back beside her. The spray sparkled as it fell, tiny diamonds against the surface. Seraya laughed, though her voice was soft, more a breath than a sound. She touched the dolphin's fin as it passed, feeling the joy radiating from its movement. The pod continued its dance for long, unmeasured time. They moved in patterns that seemed endless, weaving through one another, diving deep, then rising high. The sea glowed faintly with their passage, as if marking their joy with light. Seraya felt her spirit lift, weightless and free, carried by their unspoken song. Eventually, the dolphins slowed, their circles widened, their leaps grew softer, until they drifted near her, resting just below the surface. They swam close enough that she could hear the faint rhythm of their breath as they surfaced and sank again. Their eyes met hers, and though no words were exchanged, she felt their message clearly. Joy shared is peace multiplied. Seraya placed her hands gently on the water, watching the ripples spread outward. The dolphins pressed close once more before slowly gliding away, their sleek forms slipping into the open sea. They did not vanish all at once. They lingered, circling once, twice more, before finally disappearing into the silver horizon. The water grew still again, holding only the soft hush of the tide. Seraya remained at the surface, gazing after them with a quiet smile. The dolphins had brought her laughter without noise, joy without disruption. Their dance, brief though it was, had left the sea brighter, as though their harmony still lingered in every ripple. The mermaid let herself drift on her back, the waves carrying her gently. The sky stretched endlessly above, stars flickering like watchful candles. Her heart felt lighter than before, filled with the memory of their dance. She closed her eyes, whispering a blessing into the silence, not spoken aloud, but felt in her soul. It was a blessing of joy, of harmony, of peace that endures beyond play. And so she floated, between sea and sky, carrying the laughter of dolphins in her heart, while the night wrapped her in silver calm. The sea grew quiet again after the dolphins had drifted away, leaving behind only the faint shimmer of their joy. Seraya let herself sink slowly beneath the surface, the water closing above her in layers of calm. The deeper she swam, the softer the world became. The moonlight dimmed, the stars faded from view, and the sea turned to shades of deep blue and gentle gray. She followed a path she knew well, though it was hidden to most eyes. The water here was still, touched only by subtle currents that guided her like a slow, steady hand. Seraya moved without hurry, her tail gliding in wide, graceful arcs. The sea opened before her like a dream unfolding, each layer of water bringing her closer to a secret known only to the deep. At last, she reached a place where the seabed curved into a quiet hollow. Rock walls surrounded it, smooth and worn by centuries of tides. In the center lay a seashell, larger than any she had ever seen, its surface pale, almost white, yet glowing faintly as though it held a light of its own. The shell was closed, its two halves resting together like hands folded in prayer. Seraya approached with reverence, her movements gentle, as though not to disturb the silence of the place. She lowered herself until her hands touched the edge of the shell. It was cool beneath her fingers, smooth and strong. She felt the faint vibration of something within, not a sound but a quiet pulse, like the heartbeat of the sea. With a breath as soft as the tide, she pressed against the shell, slowly, patiently. It began to open. A sliver of light escaped, bright but tender, not sharp or blinding. It widened until the pearl within was revealed. It was not like any other pearl she had ever seen. Larger than her hand, it glowed with a calm, steady radiance. The light was not harsh but soothing, like moonlight diffused through mist. It did not shine to dazzle, but to comfort. As Seraya gazed upon it, she felt her spirit quiet, as though the pearl itself breathed peace into her. She lifted it gently, cradling it in her arms. The glow touched her skin, softened her features, and filled her heart with stillness. The weight was neither heavy nor light. It was balanced, perfect, as though it had been waiting only for her. She pressed her cheek against it, and in that moment, she felt the hush of countless waves, the patience of tides, the endurance of the sea itself. The pearl did not speak, yet it carried meaning. It told her that peace was not the absence of sound, nor the lack of movement. Peace was presence, the presence of calm, of balance, of gentle endurance. It was a gift not to be kept alone, but to be shared like a song, like a tide, like light upon the water. Around her, the hollow glowed brighter as the pearl's radiance spread. The walls reflected its light, turning from dull gray to soft silver. Shadows melted away. Tiny fish swam closer, circling slowly, their bodies gleaming as though kissed by the pearl's glow. Even the water itself seemed to grow warmer, as if it too was touched by stillness. Seraya closed her eyes and held the pearl close, allowing it to seep into her spirit. The silence deepened, but it was no longer empty. It was full, abundant, alive. She felt as though she were floating within a dream that belonged to the sea itself. For a long time, she stayed there, not counting the hours. She breathed slowly, deeply, her body swaying in the water's rhythm. She thought of the silver shore, of her song beneath the stars, of the coral gardens and the dolphins' dance. All of it seemed to come together now, resting gently within the pearl's light. When she opened her eyes again, the glow remained steady. She knew she could not leave it behind. It was not a treasure meant to be hidden in the hollow. It was a blessing, a gift of stillness that she must carry into the world. With care, she held it close and began to swim upward, her tail stirring the water in graceful motions. The hollow behind her dimmed once more as she rose, but its peace lingered. The pearl in her arms shone enough to guide her way, a lantern of calm leading her back toward the open sea. As she ascended, Seraya whispered silently in her heart, "May this stillness never fade. May it flow wherever the waves reach. May it rest in every soul that listens." The sea carried her gently, and the pearl of stillness glowed, a quiet promise within the endless tide. The pearl of stillness rested safely in Seraya's arms as she swam upward, leaving the hollow far below. Its glow was steady, casting soft light that mingled with the sea around her. Each ripple carried the reflection onward, as though the ocean itself had become a mirror of calm. The mermaid felt lighter, as if every beat of her heart had slowed to match the patient rhythm of the tide. Soon, the water began to change. It no longer pressed heavy and still, but drifted with gentle streams. A current had found her soft, steady, and inviting. It curled around her tail like a guiding hand, urging her forward through waters that seemed alive with whispers. Seraya let herself be carried, trusting the flow. The pearl glowed brighter, as if it, too, approved of the journey. The current wound its way through tall forests of kelp, their long green ribbons swaying as though listening to unseen voices. Seraya glided between them, brushing her fingertips along their smooth edges. Each movement released faint bubbles, small and bright, floating upward like silver beads. The kelp bent gently in the tide, bowing with grace, murmuring as though sharing secrets. She tilted her head, listening. The current itself seemed to carry voices soft and distant, neither human nor creature, but older than both. It spoke not with words, but with feelings. With each twist of water, Seraya felt stories unfolding. She sensed the memory of waves breaking upon forgotten shores, the sigh of ancient tides that had risen and fallen countless times. She felt the quiet sorrow of storms long past, and the joy of mornings when the sun had poured its light upon calm seas. The mermaid closed her eyes to listen more deeply. The current hummed against her skin, wrapping around her like a shawl. She heard whispers of journeys, the travels of fish across endless distances, the migration of turtles who followed the same paths for centuries, the wandering of whales that carried songs through oceans without end. All of these voices twined together, soft and endless, like a choir without sound. She swam deeper into the kelp forest, following the current as it wound its path. Shafts of moonlight pierced the surface far above, drifting down like silver curtains. The beams shifted with the tide, bending and swaying, casting patterns across the kelp. It felt as though she were walking through a temple built of water and light, each pillar alive with whispers. The pearl in her arms glowed steadily, and as its light touched the kelp, the whispers grew clearer. She felt them speak of rest, how even the strongest current eventually slows, how even the tallest wave must return to stillness. She felt them remind her that silence is not emptiness, but fullness waiting to be felt. Seraya drifted among the voices, her heart swelling with calm. She pressed the pearl lightly against her chest, as if to absorb the wisdom carried through the tide. She thought of those who lived on distant shores, perhaps restless in their sleep. She imagined the whispers reaching them, soothing their dreams, calming their thoughts like the tide calms sand. A soft swirl of water passed by her face, like a hand brushing against her cheek. She smiled, sensing the current's tenderness. It was not rushing her, not pulling her, but guiding her in patience. It seemed to say, "There is no need to hurry. All things will find their time." As she moved further, the kelp began to thin. The current opened into a wide clearing beneath the sea. Here, the water was calm, but alive with glimmering streams. Tiny particles floated like dust in sunlight, glowing faintly as they drifted. They spun in slow spirals, carried by the current's unseen hands. Seraya moved through them as though she were surrounded by falling stars. She paused in the center of the clearing, letting herself drift with the flow. The whispers continued, soft and unbroken, but now they grew gentler, quieter, like a lullaby nearing its end. She felt as though the current was telling her it had shown her enough, that the rest she must carry within her. Seraya bowed her head in gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, though no voice answered. The water swirled around her once more, touching the pearl, touching her heart, before slowly easing away. The current released her at the edge of the clearing, and the sea became still again. The kelp forest lay behind, the whispers fading into memory. Ahead stretched the wide, open ocean, calm and glimmering faintly with moonlight from above. Seraya cradled the pearl of stillness close and breathed deeply. The current's gift remained with her, not just a story, not just a sound, but a feeling etched into her very spirit. She carried its wisdom now. That peace flows like water, quiet but enduring, and that listening is sometimes the truest form of understanding. With one final glance at the kelp behind her, she turned toward the horizon. The sea awaited her, endless and calm, and the pearl glowed softly against her skin as she swam into the silver night. The current had released her gently, leaving Seraya drifting in the open sea. Around her, the water stretched wide and unbroken, calm as a great sheet of glass. The pearl of stillness glowed faintly in her arms, casting a soft light that mingled with the pale shimmer of moonbeams falling from above. Seraya lifted her gaze toward the distance. There, where sea met sky, lay the horizon, a long silver line drawn by the moon across the water. It seemed to stretch without end, a pathway made of light, as though the heavens had lowered a bridge for the sea to follow. She swam slowly, her tail stirring the water in graceful arcs. Every movement was unhurried, every breath deep and quiet. The ocean carried her onward, steady and calm. The horizon never grew closer, yet it never drifted away. It remained, glowing gently, waiting for her as though it had always belonged to her journey. Above, the sky was wide and infinite. Stars glimmered like lanterns, scattered across a dark velvet cloth. They shone steadily, unblinking, patient. The moon hung high, round and serene, her silver light flowing across the waves in ripples. Each ripple shimmered as if painted by a gentle hand. Seraya paused, resting on the surface. She floated upon her back, the pearl resting upon her chest, its glow mingling with the sky. Around her, the waves rocked her softly, like the cradle of a mother's arms. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the world. The sound was only the hush of water, the sigh of wind, the faint pulse of her own heart. It was enough. She rolled gently, returning to her swim, and kept her eyes upon the silver path. The horizon was not merely a line to her, it was a promise, a reminder that even in endless seas, there is always direction, always light, guiding the way. She imagined it whispering, "Peace is always ahead, if only you look for it." As she swam, she noticed the sea's surface changing. Tiny sparks of bioluminescence stirred beneath her, glowing each time her tail touched the water. They spread outward in delicate circles, stars upon the sea answering the stars above. The world seemed doubled, heaven above, heaven below, and she felt suspended between them, a creature of both silence and song. The pearl glowed more brightly now, reflecting the light of the moon. Seraya held it gently, feeling its warmth seep through her. She thought of the silver shore, of her song beneath the stars, of the coral gardens and the dolphins' dance, of the whispering current that had carried her. Each memory rose within her like waves, soft and unbroken. All of them pointed her toward this horizon, as though each part of the journey had been a step toward this endless light. The night air was cool when she lifted her head above the waves. She breathed deeply, drawing in the salt, sweet freshness. It cleared her thoughts, leaving only the present moment. The horizon glowed on, and she felt no need to reach it quickly. She understood now that the beauty lay not in arriving, but in being carried, in moving gently, in letting the sea's rhythm become her own. The stars above shifted slowly, wheeling in patient arcs across the sky. Their reflections followed on the water, broken only by the ripple of waves. Seraya watched them, imagining that each star carried a blessing, a small wish of peace falling softly onto the sea. She wondered if those on distant shores could see the same stars and feel the same calm. In her heart, she wished it so. She swam on until the horizon seemed to open wider, glowing with a brilliance that made the sea shimmer like silver glass. The path stretched endlessly, yet she did not feel lost. She felt guided. She felt part of something greater, vast and tender. The pearl pulsed softly in her arms, keeping time with her heart, as though agreeing with the sea's unspoken promise. Seraya stopped once more, letting the waves cradle her. She gazed at the horizon and whispered a silent prayer. May this light guide all who seek rest. May the horizon remind every soul that peace is always waiting. The water responded with a soft ripple, the wind with a tender sigh. The stars seemed to shimmer more brightly, as though echoing her prayer. She smiled gently, her eyes glistening with moonlight. The horizon remained, patient and eternal, glowing like the dream of the sea itself, and Seraya, the mermaid of silent waves, floated upon it, carrying her pearl, her heart, and the blessings of all she had gathered in her journey. The horizon shimmered with its endless silver glow, but Seraya knew her journey was nearing its close. She turned gently, letting the tide guide her back toward the familiar shore. The pearl of stillness rested softly in her arms, its light steady and calm, a treasure not for possession, but for blessing. With each slow stroke of her tail, the sea carried her closer to the land where her story had begun. The shore emerged, pale and glowing under the moon. The silver sands stretched quietly, unchanged, waiting. The night flowers along the dunes bowed again, their white petals glimmering in the faint light. They seemed to welcome her return, swaying gently in rhythm with the tide. Seraya glided into the shallows, the waves sliding over her as tenderly as a mother's hand over a child. She rose halfway onto the sand, her body half in the water, half upon the land. The pearl glowed brighter now, casting soft circles of light across the beach. The sea mirrored its glow, reflecting it in ripples that spread outward, carrying calm to the farthest reach of the tide. Seraya rested the pearl against the sand, and it seemed to hum faintly. Though no sound escaped, its blessing filled the air like the fragrance of unseen flowers. She lifted her gaze to the sky. The stars still shone in their quiet patience, and the moon continued her watch. They had listened to her song before, and now they waited once more. Seraya drew in a deep breath and let her voice rise, soft at first, then flowing outward like a gentle tide. Her song was different now. It carried the stillness of the pearl, the whispers of the current, the joy of dolphins, the peace of coral gardens, the guidance of the horizon. It was not a song of longing or sorrow, it was a song of blessing. Each note was calm, slow, and full, wrapping the shore, the sea, and the sky in its embrace. The waves seemed to pause, listening. The sand glowed faintly, touched by the pearl's light. The flowers leaned further, as though bowing in reverence. The song traveled across the water, carried by the wind, reaching far beyond what her voice alone could touch. Seraya imagined it brushing the dreams of sleeping sailors, calming restless children, soothing hearts burdened by thought. She imagined it flowing even further, carried to shores she had never seen, to souls she would never meet. Her voice lingered, steady and gentle, until the song became less sound and more presence. The sea itself seemed to sing with her, the stars seemed to shimmer in harmony, and the pearl's glow pulsed in rhythm. Together, they formed one great blessing, the blessing of silent waves. When her voice finally faded, the silence that followed was not empty. It was full, alive, resonant with peace. Seraya lowered her head, placing one hand gently upon the pearl. She whispered a prayer that was not spoken in words, but felt in her heart. May all who listen find rest. May all who wander find calm. May all who dream be carried by silent waves. The tide answered, washing softly against her tail, a final gesture of agreement. The night air cooled, wrapping her in comfort. She felt no need for more, no desire for less. Everything was complete. Seraya leaned back upon the sand, the pearl resting beside her, its glow steady as a candle that never burns away. She closed her eyes, the hush of the sea rocking her, the stars keeping watch above. Her breathing slowed, matching the tide's soft, steady, endless. And so the mermaid of silent waves lay in peace, her blessing carried outward by water, wind, and sky. The night cradled her gently, the pearl shone beside her, and the horizon remained, waiting patiently for dreams yet to come. The waves whispered softly, "Rest now, sleep now, be at peace. Rest now in the arms of silence, carried by waves that never cease. May your dreams be calm, your sleep be deep, and may the night guard you with tender peace until the morning light."